External Affairs for the Texas Central. And within this role, she works diligently to build relationships with communities and project supporters while driving outreach strategies to increase the Texas bullet train awareness at federal, state, and local levels. An innovative first of its kind, that's to say the least, first of its kind project, the Texas Bullet Train will revolutionize the way Texans travel. Prior to her role at Texas Central, Yinka worked as Senior Manager of Marketing and Digital for the Joy Collective. That's a boutique marketing firm housed under the BET and Viacom networks. In addition to Joy, Yinka served as the Director of Communications for Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, and that was for the 113th and 114th U.S. Congresses. There she gained firsthand ranking member experience directing the communications shop in the ranking member office, while managing shared responsibility with the House Space, Science, and Technology Committee. Yinka holds a master's degree in corporate communications and public relations from Georgetown University. In addition to her master's degree, she holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland at College Park. This is a very accomplished person, and we are glad to welcome her to our stage. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, I should say. So I'm going to try and use this mic, but I'm generally good at projecting, so if you can't hear me, just raise your hand and I'll make sure you know. So first of all, thanks for that introduction, John. I appreciate it. My mistake, though, because I didn't make an update. So we're the Texas high-speed train now. We're not the Texas bullet train anymore. So that's a branding concern, so my bad for that. But really quickly, just by a show of hands, how many of you have heard of the high-speed train? I like that. Very, very good. So sometimes I come into rooms and no one raises their hands, two people raise their hands, or everyone, so this is a good room to be in. But as John mentioned, my name is Yinka Robinson. I'm the Manager of External Affairs for Texas Central. And we are going to be bringing a first-of-its-kind project to the United States, but also to the great state of Texas, which is a 700-generation Shinkansen Japanese high-speed train. So, just to get started, so what makes this train different? So first you should think about everything you've thought of when you think of a train in the United States, okay? So in your mind, think about that, and as soon as you think about that, throw it all away. Because this is not what that is. This is not that. So the Texas train is a safe, fast, reliable means of transportation for Texans to get from North Texas and Houston. So it's going to travel at speeds up to 205 miles per hour. The train is completely electric, which means that it doesn't have the choo-choo, it doesn't have the smoke, it doesn't have a locomotive. It's an extremely smooth ride, and it rides on an overhead catenary system. So the Japanese Shinkansen technology has been in existence for over 54 years. And in that time period, there have been 0 operations, fatalities, or errors due to trainer operator error, period. So it has a perfect safety record. So again, when you think about transportation in the United States, there really isn't anything that exists in the same way. So again, I said it's the safest mode of transportation in the world. So this is the Japanese Shinkansen in motion right now. So again, think about when you travel to the airport. Usually you have to arrive, depending on whether you're flying domestic or internationally, you have to arrive very early in advance prior to your airplane departure. With this, these trains operate with an average 30-second annual delay. Actually, they sent out an email to all of their users this year because they left 30 seconds early. So they left 30 seconds early. It's on time, every time, all of the time. So as you can see, it travels through mountains, and it's guided by an overhead catenary system. And so that overhead catenary system is what is used to give the train its power, that electricity. So the tops of the trains tie into that overhead catenary, and it allows that the energy to be recycled through the train as it's going in motion. What makes this project unique is that we incorporate something called an investor-owned approach to transportation and infrastructure, which means that we are a private company, but our company has raised the capital needed in order to make this train a reality, which means there's no taxpayer funding, no taxpayer dollars, no government grants or operational subsidies. All of this money has been lent by private or Texan investors who believe in the viability of the project. So folks like Drake McLean Jr., John Kleinhines, Jack Matthews, who are very prominent Texans who, again, believe in this project and want to see it happen. So they've placed their trust in us in order to make that happen. So we've conducted over 97 different investment grade ridership studies. And in that time, and as we were studying, we learned that Dallas to Houston was the best route for a commercially viable high-speed train. So North Texas to Houston. But we can't forget about our Brazos Valley Station, which is located equal distance between Bryan College Station and Huntsville. So there's over 80,000 students that live in that area attending Texas A&M University, Sam Houston, all of those areas. But also you have to think about the population that has been stimulated as a result of those schools. And right now, there's not really an efficient way for them to travel between point A and B outside of driving on the highway or going to their executive airport. Well, this will tap into that area and allow those means of transportation to be much more efficient than what has existed before. And of course, in those investment grade ridership studies that we've done, we determined that over 80% of Texans say that they would ride this train. Because again, how many of you have traveled between Dallas to Houston? Right? And we're taking I-45. So how many of you actually enjoy that drive between Dallas and Houston? No hands. Oh, surprise, right? So I-45 is actually the second most dangerous highway in the United States. Not only that, as you know, there's quite a bit of construction, and that construction continues and continues and continues and makes the drive from 4 hours, sometimes 6 hours, depending on what you're encountering that day. So again, this is much more efficient and will allow people to travel safe, reliably, and comfortably. So we always like to show this timeline because it's important for people to understand that though this, in the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years, that might be the first time that you've heard about this project, we've actually been in operation as a company, Texas Central, since 2007, right? And so things really started happening in 2011, so we'd like to show this timeline. We got our feasibility study, which is a big deal because, again, the feasibility of this project when it coming to the United States is important. Then the environmental process begins, which led us to that capital raise that we received to continue moving forward. And then in December of 2017, we received our draft environmental impact statement. And so what that did was narrow this train alignment down from 6 potential alignments to 1 preferred build alternative that was given by the Federal Railroad Administration. And then as we continued moving forward and going to the next step in that process, which is called the EIS, or the final environmental impact, we named Bechtel as our project manager. Bechtel handles over thousands and thousands of projects throughout the United States and really globally, but they also have huge rail projects under their belt. So again, people who know how to make this project happen, people who have the experience. And then moving forward, we named our civil construction consortium. So we announced Salini and Preglio, which is a rail and infrastructure company from Italy. We announced Lane Construction and WSP. So the 3 of those groups are working together to get all of the civil construction ready and up to, let's say up to speed for this project. And then lastly, most recently, in October of 2018, we announced that Renfe would be the operator of the Texas high-speed train. So Texas Central is the builder, Renfe will be the operator. So this is important to note because Renfe, again, has experience operating over 30 different rail lines over in Europe. Okay, so they operate high-speed trains, and they are going to be overseeing the way that the operations are managed with this project. This is something that my boss always likes to say, we are building the train every day. So although you might not see boots on the ground yet, shovels in the ground, dirt being turned, there are people working for Texas Central in Austin, in Houston, in Dallas, in Washington, D.C., who are working to build this train and to get everything in order so that you can have it as soon as possible. So again, those companies that I mentioned are up here on the screen, Bechtel, Salini and Preglio, Renfe, Lane, but AECOM is another company, ADIF, which is a part of Salini and Preglio, CLS, so those are the folks that will actually go and manage the interfaces between landowner and Texas Central and land agents to make sure that we come to the best term or best case solution for landowners. Then Eric and Sam, who again have been a huge proponent of engineering and environmental processes, as well as free samples. So again, putting all of what I just said, because I know I speak fast, into perspective. Selene, Lane, and WSP are the civil contractor. They're going to be building everything from the ground up, as it says up there, but that viaduct system that we'll be incorporating, because the train will be elevated on viaducts 45 feet in the air, they will be a part of that construction. Where it is not elevated on viaducts, it'll be on earthen berm embankments, which means that it'll travel above or under all existing roadways. And then, of course, JR Central. As I mentioned, this is a Japanese Shinkansen train, which means that JRC will be purchasing that technology from them. And then, of course, Renfe will be the operator, so making sure that your experience is inside the station, the way that the trains are run, the conductors on those trains, the staff are all up to speed or up to code, right? And then, of course, Texas Central and Bechtel as program managers and builders of the high-speed train. So again, construction on a Texas-sized scale. So to put things in perspective, that concrete, 10 million cubic yards of concrete, is 3 times the amount used in the Hoover Dam. So if you've ever been there, that's a huge mass, a huge amount of concrete. Those rail ties cover nearly 1,100 miles. And so, of course, the distance between Dallas to Houston is about 240 miles. However, when you go from end-to-end tie-outs with that rail, it amounts to just about that much. And then, of course, those 3 passenger stations that I mentioned, Dallas or North Texas, Houston in the Brazos Valley, and then 2 maintenance of way facilities along the route. And then, of course, the most important thing is jobs, right? So not only are we a huge project that is the magnitude very great, we are going to be bringing jobs to Texas, and that's what's very important. So 10,000 direct jobs during each year of construction. Those jobs range from a multitude of areas. There's actually a handout on all of your tables that kind of goes into a little bit more detail about those jobs, and there's also more in the back of the room. But these jobs are good, well-paying, high-paying jobs, and we're going to be bringing facilitators to come to the state of Texas and teach those who are going to be employed by Texas Central and Renfe how to operate this train in the proper manner. So again, that 10,000 direct jobs amounts to about 1,576 jobs, according to the Federal Railroad Administration, once the train, is up and operational. So, and 25% of those jobs are actually going to be in the rural communities that we're going to be passing through. So think Grimes County, Limestone County, Leon County, all of those areas. And again, it's about building relationships, right? So I mentioned CLS, I mentioned they're the folks that interface with landowners when we're visiting properties, but it's important to have relationships because again, though many of you know about this project, I'm sure you've also heard that there's opposition that exists in relation to this project. And they are a small but vocal minority, right? But it's important for us to establish relationships in those communities where our opposition lives so that we can at least have advocates who have actually worked with us. Because it's one thing for myself as an employee of Texas Central to tell someone, I think this train is great, I think it should come, I think it should be here. It's quite another thing for somebody's next door neighbor to say, hey, we work with Texas Central, we like their business practices, they paid us far above fair market value. They were very nice, they were cordial, all of these different things, right? And a lot of these folks that we have on this page are actually people who are vehemently opposed to the project in the beginning. Now, it would be a lie if I told you that this happened immediately. They suddenly were very happy with us. A lot of these people, it took 3-4 years, but once you have them on board, once you have them as advocates, it really makes a huge difference. The train, again, is good for Texas and it's good for the US, but I want to tell you, or notice actually, why that is. And is there sound? Well, I guess we'll find out. Yep, there's sound. I hear it.
You can hear it.
that's a really important factoid, converting just 4% of what's required for an interstate highway. And again, there's a document on your table that goes into further detail about that. So that video is something that we recently developed with all of the information that we pulled from the draft environmental impact statement to take that 3,000-page document, narrow it down to the high points so that people could actually see the impact that this project is going to have, not only on the United States, but the state of Texas overall. So those numbers are really important to remember. And again, it's a $36 billion direct economic impact over the next 25 years. That's equivalent to 84 Super Bowls, which always shocks me because I think about the amount of talent and all of the people that are involved in that process, and I think 84 of those, wow. So it's roughly every Super Bowl for the next 25 years, it would be about 5 of them. So if we had 5 Super Bowls for the next 25 years, that would be the amount of money generated from this project. And again, I mentioned those 25% of jobs are going to be in those rural communities. They're not going to be jobs that are there for a moment and gone after a little while. Those are going to be permanent jobs that keep people employed. But it's also important to remember the way that the train will actually stimulate the economies that it passes through. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention how important those first responders, trainings, police departments, and all of that work will be in order to make sure that this train works properly. Let's say that someone had a heart attack on board. Well, it's elevated 45 feet in the air. How do you get to someone? That means that we have to work with those first responders throughout those 10 counties, with those police personnel throughout those 10 counties to make sure that we have proper mechanisms in place so that if something like that were to happen, there's a way for people to get into the train and get that person off and then to the local hospital or wherever the case may be, right? So these are just some renderings of what the stations are going to look like. So up at the top, we have the North Texas station or the Dallas station. So that station is actually going to be located adjacent to I-35. So it's going to be cat a corner to where the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center is. So if you've ever been over there, you get off 35 or you come down Riverfront and you see that Sonic and then you see that cut rate liquor store. So we're going to be right in that vast expanse of open area. Yeah, I mean, usually people are like, oh yes, I know exactly. We'll be located in that open field right over there. And then the Brazos Valley Station is actually going to be located in Groves Prairie, Texas. So again, that's about 30 minutes between Bryan College Station and Huntsville. We're actually going to have bus systems in place so that the folks in that area, if they can't drive, especially students, can't get to the station, there's going to be busing that allows them to get so from the school campuses. And we're also looking with other transportation systems located in that area to see if there could be some more interoperability there. But I mentioned there's less there than there is here. But of course, in North Texas and Houston, with DART and Metro, there's going to be infinite interoperability just to make sure that for those who don't drive or people who live further out, there's a way for them to still get to the train using existing means of transportation. And so the Houston station is going to be located on the other side of that 610 and 290 loop in what's called the Northwest Transit Center. So there's a huge hub or metro transit operation that exists right there. So we're going to tie directly into that. And then also it's an area, if you're familiar with Houston, that has kind of fallen off a little bit over the last, let's say 10 or 12 years. And we're hoping that by building this station, in addition to what's already there, we'll be able to revitalize that community as well.
Could you take that North Texas and put Dallas? And
We
since you
would,
got,
but we-
since you got Houston,
Right.
and
we-
since they come into Dallas, and
Well,
since
so
you
here's
need
the
our
thing.
help, and
Here's
since
the
you need a
thing.
political round
Here's
out,
the thing.
instead of focus in Dallas, and since we're trying to get jobs in Dallas, and we can develop
Oh,
in Dallas,
man,
so why
okay.
you putting Houston and don't put Dallas?
Okay, well.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll talk to them, I'll talk to
And
them.
he
if I
stole
can.
my thunder.
We say Dallas, but we put North Texas on paper because we want people who live in Fort Worth and McKinney and Allen and Plano.
What about Houston?
That's southeast
But
Texas.
Missouri and all those Southport, all of Missouri,
Right.
same thing, right?
Right.
So who in charge putting North Texas there?
That
Who
would
made
be
that
our
statement?
CEO.
Who? You tell them to call me, I'm chair economic government, vice chair, we want Dallas.
Okay.
I couldn't have said it any better. I just whispered in his ear and that set him off, but I was already ready to pounce, you know. But, yeah, having been chair of economic development and now vice chair again, we've worked real hard to give this an ID. It's clearly that station's in downtown Dallas.
It is.
And we got enough of this stuff with Arlington, you know, having the Cowboys and the Rangers. We need a little ID, and you're not doing that with southeast Texas, with Houston and all their suburbs. So, you know, we want credit for it. It came out of the spirit of it from City Hall. That's where it started flowering. And even I'm on the executive board of the North Texas Commission. Yes, they are behind it, but this is a Dallas project.
It is, it is. I will make those notes to my executive.
I'll certainly tell Holly Reed that.
I know you will. I know you will.
Question, so you were saying that you need everyone pretty much in agreement to make this happen, and that recent judgment favoring the property owners about the eminent domain, is there another plan if that doesn't take root? I mean, if they won't allow that, is there a different alternate route or something rather than using that particular location?
Sure, so it won't be an alternate route because the route is set in stone and defined, but there will be other means that we can go through to get to that piece of land or around it. So the idea again here, so that ruling that she's referencing is in relation to Mr. Miles and Leon Cap. So the idea here is that this judge ruled that Texas Central was not a railroad. But this is not the first time that something like this has happened. And they essentially gave an opportunity to punt it to be appealed. And that's the process that we've gone through more than once before. We've gone through it, we've beat it before, so we're not worried about it. Again, when it comes to things like eminent domain, we realize how sensitive that entire process is. I mean, if it were my ranch, I can't say that I'd want somebody going through it as well. But that's why we have this land option purchase program, because it's not about taking an entire swath of someone's land, it's about signing an option so that if we only need about 5 miles, we might sign an option for 10 to make sure that we're getting what we need, but not putting ourselves in a position where we're creating an initial or an additional disturbance than what's necessary. Whereas when you think about a government-funded project or TxDOT or something like that, when they come into play, it's likely that they would take an entire swath of land and say, hey, we're coming, get out of the way. And we really don't want to do that. And we haven't had to so far, and we'd like to keep ourselves on that trajectory. So, actually, I'm sorry. So the Dallas North Texas station, I saw some faces again back there, so I kind of wanted to skip over it, but of course, I know exactly what you mean, and we've had this conversation internally before as well, but sometimes these decisions come from higher ups who have a very strategic focus in mind when it comes to how they're marketing things. Hopefully that'll change.
But
We can get you exactly what you
this is my point right here.
Sure.
The high-speed rail is from Dallas to Houston. And the legislature said they did consult and said, what is the best place to put this high-speed rail? Dallas to Houston, number one. It's always was Dallas to Houston.
Dallas to Houston.
It never was North Texas. So therefore, if they feel like it's North Texas station, I got a problem. I think Rick got a problem. I think the people in this room got a problem because we're trying to get Dallas benefit. I know the city of Houston is larger than Dallas, but also it's working inside the city of Dallas and downtown of Dallas, which is going to economic impact going to be. So therefore, North Texas should be off there. So I will write the CO and I will put that in writing, but that is a problem when I see that and you come to Dallas trying to sell your rail to Dallas.
Sure.
And that's a major issue.
Yeah, and it's barely even in Houston at all. It's really northwest Houston, so it's right on the border of Houston. May not even be in the city limits of Houston, but it's still called Houston, you know, so. And
I
there's-
absolutely understand your concern.
yeah, I can't even believe, that's the first time I've seen that. That's why we've gone off the rails.
Well, I mean, I saw both of your faces, and I see some other familiar faces in the room as well. And as I'm standing here, giving the presentation, I'm thinking, this is probably the first time that they've seen this new one. That's changed, from bullet train to high-speed train and all of this new information. So again, it's important for us to be here having these conversations so I can take those concerns back to, because although I'm not on the executive team, I'm proud to say that our company listens to the feedback that we get from people that we present to, groups that we present to. So, I mean, if there's any concern, you can email to me directly, or you can just bypass me, go to
I'll send you a frowny face emoji.
Please do, please do. And then, of course, it's important to join the conversation. I'm almost done, don't worry, I have one more video. But we take social media very seriously because it's a way for us to speak to constituents that are going to be involved with this Dallas to Houston high-speed train.
You got it right.
On Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So if you're active on any of those social media channels, please give us a shout. I'll be one of the folks that's responding to you. I will be the person responding to you if it's Instagram. On Twitter and Facebook, you never know who you might get, but we're all very proud of what we do there. So lastly, I just want to show you kind of an idea of what the customer experience will be like as you're riding the high-speed train.
Time has become a commodity, actually one of our most precious resources. We want to fill it like this, or this. But for too many Texans, it's filled like this. That's why we're working on this. For commuters between North Texas and Houston, it's the Texas high-speed train, the fastest and safest way across Texas, trimming a 4.5-hour slog into a smooth 90 minutes. Say you're in Houston, just after daycare drop-off. You get an urgent request. Can you be in Dallas for a rush meeting at noon? By air? No. By car? Absolutely not. By the high-speed train? Yes. Trains leave every 30 minutes between North Texas and Houston, in both directions. And with just that, you're on. Your itinerary stays a step ahead, building itself on the fly. Say you had a car in Dallas. Done. And the station's right where you want them. We'll help you find your way, in person or with cues to guide your way. Trains leave on time, every time. But if you choose, you can hang out a bit. Still on track for that noon meeting. Security also works differently, using technology to ensure just the right people are on board. Again, trains leave every 30 minutes, literally like clockwork. No delays, no weather glitches, no airport nightmares. Choose to order any food. It'll be delivered right to your seat. Charge your devices right from your tabletop. And at nearly 200 miles an hour, stop and go becomes all go. 90 minutes between North Texas and Houston. There's fast connectivity to whatever you want. Movies, TV, even updates on your itinerary. And as you order stuff on board, we'll tally up and send receipts to your device. As you get closer, your device is tracking, lining up your ride and other info for your arrival. Then, you're there. A morning fire drill turned into a noon meeting. And the return, just as easy. Amazingly getting you back well ahead of pickup. 90 minutes across Texas. It's the smarter, safer, and faster way across Texas.
So, in closing, we're excited about this project, and we hope that you're excited about it too, despite some concerns that we are definitely going to address. But one of the most important things involved with the way that we continue to move this project forward is by getting advocates and getting advocacy because it's, again, one thing for a legislator, just like a landowner, to hear from a representative from Texas Central. It's quite another for the Southeast Dallas Chamber to say something, or the Dallas Regional Chamber, or, you know, Urban Chamber to say, we want this project to come to the state of Texas. We want it here in our city so that we can utilize it. So if you text TRAIN to 52886, you'll be logged into our registry, and it's really only active during the ledge session. So we sent text messages out during the 85th. We'll be sending some out here in the 86th, but they're really timely and relevant to what's going on. So if there's a bill or something that we need your support from, we'll send a text message so you know what's going on, and you can log onto our site and sign a form that'll be sent to your legislator where you live. And it populates a letter about many different subjects, down to the environmental, to the engineering, to the economic stimulation, whatever you want. And it'll generate that letter, and you can change it, you can update it, you can add pieces in yourself, and then it'll directly send it to your legislators, or all of those who are representative for wherever you live. So me living in Dallas, you know, it sends a letter to EJ, it'll send a letter to Calling All Red, it'll send a letter to all of those folks, in addition to the state legislators. So Royce West will get one from me, but again, and so will Eric would've. But you get the idea. So it's important for that advocacy to take place, so that we can continue to move forward, so that in 2024 you'll actually have this project up and running. So with that, I know we paused for some questions in between, but now, if there's still time, questions. Yes.
So, couple of things.
Sure.
And I'm familiar with this because I'm from Miami, and it's just now construction. It's free. It took years. It took a lot longer than was initially stated to build a train from Miami to Orlando.
Right.
So are you guys connected with that project in some way, or?
What do you mean connected?
Like, really, because it's the same high-speed train, except I think their maximum speed is like 125. But it's taken a lot longer, so I would ask, have you guys learned from kind of the things that they went through
Sure.
that created delays
Sure.
in getting it to market?
Sure. Absolutely. So yes, we do have contact with the folks at the Brightline. It's not the same because it's more of a commuter rail at this point, because it doesn't get you all the way to all of the access points that they are initially hoping folks to be able to get to in that time. So even though it can get up to those high speeds, it can't right now because the track is not fully finished. In addition to it, it has full grade crossings, which mean that there are those crossing arms that come down, and people will have to wait for the train to go by. So they've actually had some deaths that have taken place as a result of the train running. So there are some very critical differences that I just want to point out. Yes, we use all of the projects that are in existence that might touch on what we're doing as a case study, but again, there really is nothing like this in the United States, and there won't be until we're up and running. So of course, everything is a learning experience, but I just, as you asked that question, I just want to make those clear clarifications between the difference of the two projects.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure.
I'd like to understand what kind of financial resources are going to go to our first responders. And I also want to point out, as a mom, when I see your graphic of the animal next to my kid who wants to pet him, like, that doesn't make me feel safe. So I would,
Sure.
putting a pet into a carrier, because sometimes people are taking some pretty wild,
Oh, sure.
pretty wild pets out. So I want to
Oh,
point out to you, I saw that graphic and I was like, don't.
So actually, I'm not sure if you could see, but, so that was the service animal. So those are the only types of animals that will be allowed onto the train, service animals. So in that regard, service animals aren't kept in pet carriers because they're needed for a specific purpose, whether it's for a seeing eye dog, a hearing dog, a diabetic dog, whatever the case is, but they have to show explicit documentation that says that that animal is for that purpose.
I'm familiar, but we have people taking all kinds of animals that aren't just dogs.
Sure.
So I just wanted you to.
Sure.
We've had losses with the people trying to take these pets onto the airline.
Like the ferret and
Ferret
all
and
those things.
peacock and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff.
So no, So no, there's very explicit documentation that will be needed in order for a service animal to get onto the train. So I of course will take that into consideration. I know they already have, but I mean, I'll bring that back so we can talk about that so that there's more messaging around what that might look like, but don't expect to see a peacock or a ferret on the train. We're really only anticipating, or a snake or anything like that. We're anticipating dogs, maybe a cat, but it's much different than an emotional support dog, a service animal that requires or creates a service or provides a service to an individual.
And remind me of the resources, financial resources to first responders.
Sure. So financial resources to first responders. So I know in terms of the way that that $12 billion investment goes, in a perfect world, that $2.5 billion tax revenue generation that's going to come as a result of us being a taxpayer to those counties that we pass through. When local government works properly, the idea is that it would trickle down to those first responders, those school districts, those hospitals. But I say when it works properly because we can't always control how that happens. But that's what we have allotted, set aside right now. But I can definitely get back to you and see if there's any more information that exists, because I don't want to tell you something wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I would prefer to make sure that there is a certain dollar amount that is specifically allocated to the training and resources needed to our first responders and responding to this. Because if it goes into the big black hole.
When you say the big black hole.
The big black hole of government.
Sure.
That would be
A
a
concern.
concern.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, what is the projected cost per person to travel back and forth?
Sure. So we're going to be using something called a variable pricing structure. So while I can't give you an exact amount, what I can say is that on the low end, it has to be competitive with car travel. So whatever it takes for you to make that round trip between Dallas and Houston in your car for whatever type of car you drive. So for me, that'd be probably $160 for 2 ways, or it could be as low as $60 for the Mazda that I used to drive. It just depends. And then on the high end, we'll be competitive with airline travel, with fluctuations in between that are based on demand. So if it's Christmas, it's likely to be more expensive. If it's Super Bowl weekend, or if there's a major game going on, something like that, it can be more expensive. But we're also really looking at making sure that there's discounts available for seniors, for students, for frequent travelers, all of those things. Sure.
Will people have to pay to park at the location?
I believe you will have to pay to park if you're there for an extended period of time. But for example, unlike today, you can get from point A to point B in 90 minutes, so you could be there and back in 3 hours or something like that. Depending on how long you're there, you might not have to pay. And there will be things like Uber and Kiss and Ride and DART and bus connectivity to make sure that you can get from point A to point B. Meaning Kiss and Ride, meaning your loved one drops you off at the front.
Oh, I thought that was a service.
No. They give you, I've looked at DC, so that's what they call that at the station where people drop you off. I saw your face, I saw your alarm. No, I would not be kissing you on the cheek. No one from Texas will be. But, a loved one might be dropping you off, give you a hug, give you a kiss on the cheek, and then they drop you off and you're ready to ride. Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, one more thing that I wanted to mention. We are running something called our Ready to Ride campaign. And what that Ready to Ride campaign is we want people to tell the world why they're ready to ride the high-speed train. So that initiative exists entirely online. You can log on to texascentral.com/readytoride. And when you do, you'll be able to upload a video, whether it's your face, whether it's your dog, whether it's the traffic that you're experiencing, whether it's a skit that you've planned out. When we talk to students, they're very excited about having skits and something planned. But again, that's about getting real faces in front of people, showing why they're ready to ride the train.
Do you have a simulator?
We do. So if you come to one of our open houses, you'll be able to see that.
When, where?
We announce those periodically from time to time, but we do.
Okay.
We
too. So you'll be able to get a sound demonstration, VR, all of that.